What if the greatest enemy you will ever face is not out there? What if it has never been the economy, the competition, the people who doubted you, the circumstances that broke you? What if the force that has been quietly, invisibly, systematically dismantling your potential lives inside you? Not in your weakness, not in your failures, in the part of you that you have never looked at. There is a hidden world inside every human being, a world that most people spend their entire lives running from. A world so vast, so powerful, so ancient, that the greatest minds in history have trembled at its edges. Carl Jung called it the shadow, and he said something that should stop you cold. He said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Read that again. Let it land. Everything you have called bad luck, every relationship that imploded, every pattern that keeps repeating, every dream that somehow never quite became real. Jung said that was not fate. That was you. The part of you that you refused to see. Stay with me. Because what we are about to explore together, it will not just change how you see yourself. It will change how you see everything. It is 1913, Zurich, Switzerland. A brilliant 38-year-old psychiatrist sits alone in a dark room. He has everything the world would call success, a thriving practice, a beautiful family, a reputation that has made him the chosen successor of the great Sigmund Freud himself. He is, by every external measure, a man who has arrived, and he is absolutely terrified, because something has been happening to Carl Jung that he cannot explain. Visions, waking dreams, images rising from somewhere beneath the floor of his rational mind, a flood of symbols and figures and voices that feel more real than the waking world. A lesser man would have called a doctor. A lesser man would have medicated the visions away, buried them under routine and respectability and the comfortable noise of daily life. But Carl Jung did something that required a kind of courage most people never find. He descended. Deliberately. Willingly. He sat in that dark room, closed his eyes, and he went down. Down into the part of himself he had never explored. Down into the images, the fears, the ancient figures moving in the depths. He called it his confrontation with the unconscious. For 6 years he descended. He kept journals, the now legendary Red Book, filling page after page with the visions he encountered, the dialogues he had with figures that seemed to rise from somewhere older than memory. Most people who knew him thought he was losing his mind. He was doing the opposite. He was finding it for the very first time, the whole of it. Not just the polished, presentable surface, the depths, the darkness, the staggering, humbling totality of what it means to be a human being. And what he brought back from those depths became one of the most revolutionary maps of the human soul ever drawn. But before we go further, we need to talk about you, not Jung. You. Because here is the truth that most self-help content will never tell you. Most personal development sits safely on the surface. It gives you habits and morning routines and positive affirmations, all perfectly good, all absolutely insufficient, because the surface is not where your life is being run. Think about the last time you reacted in a way that surprised even you. You snapped at someone you love and did not know why. You sabotaged something that was going well right when it mattered most. You were drawn to a person you knew was wrong for you and went anyway. You felt a rage so disproportionate to the moment that it frightened you. That was not weakness. That was not a character flaw. That was not something to be ashamed of and quickly buried. That was your shadow, making itself known. Jung described it this way: the shadow is everything in you that you have been told is unacceptable. Everything you were taught to hide, to suppress, to deny. The anger that was not allowed, the grief that was not permitted, the ambition that felt shameful, the desires that seemed wrong. From the time you were a child, you were given a message, whether spoken or unspoken, about which parts of you were welcome. Be good. Be quiet. Be strong. Do not cry. Do not want too much. Do not take up too much space. And you listened. Because you had to. Because love felt conditional on compliance. So you took those parts, those wild, inconvenient, difficult, powerful parts, and you buried them. You packed them down into the basement of your psyche and locked the door and covered it with the furniture of your personality, and told yourself, that is not me. I am not that. But here is what Jung spent his life trying to tell the world. What you bury does not die. What you bury grows. It grows in the dark, feeding on the energy you spend keeping it hidden, becoming more dense and more powerful with every year of denial. And then it finds ways out. Not through the front door, not with your permission, but through cracks, through your reactions, through your compulsions, through the patterns that keep repeating no matter how much you swear this time will be different. You have been living with a force inside you that you never named, never faced, never understood, and it has been making decisions on your behalf for your entire life. So what do you do with that? Do you despair? Do you feel the weight of all those buried years and conclude that you are somehow fundamentally broken? No, because Jung did not descend into the darkness to be destroyed by it. He descended to integrate it, and that word, integration, is the most important word in this entire conversation. There came a moment in Jung's long descent when he encountered a figure in his visions that he named Philemon, a wise, winged, ancient presence that seemed to carry knowledge Jung himself did not consciously possess. He understood that the psyche is not a single unified thing. It is a community, a vast inner world populated by parts some known, some hidden, some ancient beyond individual memory. And the path to wholeness, to what Jung called individuation, was not the elimination of the dark parts. It was their acceptance, not indulgence, not permission for every dark impulse to be acted upon without restraint. Acceptance, acknowledgement, the courage to look at the full spectrum of what you are, light and shadow both, and say, I see you. You are part of me. I will not be ruled by you, but I will no longer pretend you do not exist. That is the turning point. That is the moment Jung is pointing you toward. The moment you stop managing your image and start exploring your reality. And now we go deep. This is where Jung's wisdom becomes instruction, where philosophy becomes practice, where understanding becomes transformation. The first truth, the shadow is not your enemy, it is your most misunderstood ally. Every quality you suppress, every part you denied, contains energy. Real, enormous, usable energy. The man who suppresses his anger does not eliminate it. He transforms it into passive aggression, into chronic tension, into a quiet seething that poisons every relationship he touches. But the man who faces his anger, who sits with it, who asks it what it is protecting, who learns to channel it with consciousness and intention, that man has access to a force that becomes conviction, boundaries, fierce protective love. The ability to say no with such clarity that the world reorganizes around him. Jung said that in the shadow lies gold, not metaphorical gold, actual power, the power of your unlived life, the creativity that was shamed out of you, the sensitivity that was called weakness, the wildness that was domesticated before you ever had a chance to understand what it was for. Your shadow is not the worst of you. It is often the best of you, waiting to be reclaimed. The second truth. What you cannot see in yourself, you will see everywhere in others. Jung called this projection. And once you understand it, you will never see human conflict the same way again. Have you ever had an irrational, disproportionate reaction to someone? Not just disliking them, but a visceral, almost physical repulsion? A burning irritation that seems far too large for what they actually did? Jung would lean forward and say, look there, look carefully. Because the qualities that trigger you most intensely in other people are almost always the qualities you have most forcefully denied in yourself. The person who cannot stand arrogance is often someone sitting on a deep well of suppressed pride, convinced that wanting to be seen is shameful. The person who is enraged by weakness in others is often someone who was forced to be strong before they were ready, who never had permission to be vulnerable, who buried their own fragility so deep they forgot it existed. This is not comfortable. It was never meant to be comfortable. But it is liberating, because it means that every person who drives you mad is holding up a mirror. Every charged reaction is a breadcrumb leading you back to yourself. The work is not to stop the projection. The work is to follow it home. The third truth, the unlived life will always find a way to be lived one way or another. This might be the most haunting of Jung's insights, and the most urgent. He observed across thousands of patients across decades of practice that what people refuse to live consciously, they live unconsciously. What they refuse to choose, they are compelled toward. The man who always wanted to be an artist but chose the safe career, who told himself the dream was foolish, impractical, self-indulgent, does not escape the longing. He just meets it in different forms. In bitterness, in midlife crisis, in the seething resentment he feels for people brave enough to do what he was. Not the woman who was never allowed to be angry, who told herself she was above conflict, too spiritual for rage, does not transcend the anger. She lives it through her body, through illness, through the explosion that finally comes at the worst possible moment with the worst possible consequences. Your unlived life is not patient, it is insistent. And the only way to stop it from living you is to begin, with courage and honesty and whatever support you need done to live it yourself on purpose. In the light, the fourth truth, wholeness is not perfection. It is the courage to be complete. We have been sold an impossible ideal, a version of the good person, the successful person, the spiritual person, that is clean and consistent and free of contradiction. A self that only ever feels the approved emotions, only ever wants the approved things, only ever moves in the approved directions. Jung saw through this with a clarity that was almost ruthless. He said, "The most dangerous people in the world are not the ones in touch with their darkness. The most dangerous people are the ones who are convinced they have none. Because the person who believes themselves entirely good, who has split themselves so cleanly into light and dark, acceptable and unacceptable, has simply handed the keys of their darkness to the unconscious. And the unconscious will spend that darkness with interest. Wholeness is not about becoming better. It is about becoming more honest, more complete, more willing to hold the full, complex, contradictory truth of what you actually are. The goal is not a human being without shadow. The goal is a human being who has walked into their shadow and come back larger. I want you to sit with something for a moment. Think about the life you are living. Not the one you describe to other people, not the curated version. The actual life, the one that exists in the quiet moments. The one that is there when the noise dies down and it is just you, with your thoughts, and your regrets and the dim, persistent ache of something unlived. How much of that life is yours? How much of it was chosen, genuinely, freely, from the full depth of who you actually are? And how much of it was constructed and carefully, fearfully, to keep the unacceptable parts hidden? To keep the love conditional on your coming? To maintain an image that cost you everything that was real? Carl Jung lived to be 85 years old. He spent nearly 7 decades mapping the human soul. Not from a distance, not as a detached academic exercise, but from the inside. From the terrifying, transforming, ultimately sacred experience of a man who refused to look away from himself. And near the end of his life, he was asked what he believed to be the central task of human existence. He did not say achievement. He did not say virtue. He did not say happiness in any conventional sense. He said, to become who you truly are, not who you were told to be, not who is safe or approved or impressive, who you truly are. And that person, the true you, the complete you, the you that includes the shadow and the light and every buried dream and every inconvenient truth, that person is not dangerous. That person is extraordinary. You have been living at a fraction of your power, not because you are not talented enough or disciplined enough or worthy. Enough because you have been trying to run on half an engine, trying to build a whole life from half a self. The other half has been waiting in the dark. Patient, powerful, yours. It has been waiting for the day you finally stop running, the day you finally turn around, the day you look into the basement of your own soul, not with shame, not with horror, but with the quiet, fierce, compassionate gaze of someone who is finally ready to be whole. Jung said one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The light you are looking for is not ahead of you. It is inside you, in the very places you have most feared to look. So here is your invitation, not a task, not a homework assignment, an invitation. This week, not someday, this week I want you to choose one pattern, one reaction, one repeated experience in your life that you have always explained away with the story of other people. Bad luck, wrong timing. And instead of explaining it, explore it. Sit with it quietly. Ask it, what part of me is creating this? What am I refusing to see? What have I buried that is making itself known in this way? You do not need a therapist to begin this work. Though there is no shame and enormous courage in seeking one, you need only a journal, a quiet space, and the willingness to be more honest with yourself than you have ever been before. Carl Jung did not give the world a comfortable philosophy. He gave the world a true one. And the truth is this: you are larger than the life you are living. You are deeper than the self you present. You are more powerful than anything that has ever happened to you. But none of that becomes available to you on the surface. It is waiting in the depths. And the only way to claim it is to go down, not to be destroyed, not to be defined by the darkness, but to integrate it, to alchemize it, to bring it into the light and discover that what you feared most about yourself is actually the source of your greatest strength. The hidden power inside you is real. It has always been real, and it has been waiting patiently, faithfully, with extraordinary endurance for this moment. For the moment you finally stop hiding and start becoming whole. If something in this video reached a part of you that rarely gets reached, that is not coincidence. Share it with someone who is ready. Subscribe, and let us keep going deeper together. The most important journey you will ever take begins exactly where you are most afraid to look.